If you look at a map of the world's oceans today, it looks crowded. Thousands of colored dots crawling slowly across the blue, each one a tanker, a container ship, a lifeline of the global economy. We track them with satellites. We know where they are going, and what they are carrying. We have turned the vast, terrifying ocean into a spreadsheet, or at least we think we have, because every day, dozens of these dots simply vanish. They don't sink. They don't send distress calls. They just flip a switch and 100,000 tons of steel disappears from the face of the earth. They go dark. And when they reappear, weeks later, on the other side of the world, their cargo holds are mysteriously empty. This is not a glitch. It is not a mistake. It is a weapon. Welcome to the Dark Fleet, a rusted, uninsured armada of ghost ships that operates in the shadows of international law. They are the reason sanctions fail. They are the reason dictators stay rich while their people starve. They are the invisible arteries of a shadow economy that is running parallel to our own, unchecked and unspoken. And they are sailing past our coastlines right now, invisible, untouchable, and waiting for a disaster that no one is coming to fix. To understand how this magic trick works, you first have to understand that the ocean is not as lawless as it feels. For decades, maritime law has relied on a system called AIS. It is an automatic identification system, a digital heartbeat that every large ship is required to broadcast. It says, "I am here. I am the Titan. I am heading to Rotterdam. Please do not crash into me." It is a system built on trust, designed to keep sailors alive in the blackest nights of the Atlantic. But trust is a funny thing. It relies on everyone agreeing to play by the rules. And for the captains of the Dark Fleet, the rules are merely suggestions. The process usually starts in international waters, just outside the jurisdiction of any curious coast guard. A tanker, let's call her the Queen Majida, is sailing quietly towards a destination she has no intention of reaching. Then the captain gives an order. A switch is flipped, and on the screens of maritime traffic controllers in London or New York or Singapore, the Queen Majida simply ceases to exist. She has gone dark. But disappearing is the easy part. The real trick, the one that keeps intelligence agencies up at night, is being in two places at once. It is called GNSS spoofing. While the physical ship is slipping into a sanctioned port in Iran or Russia, its digital ghost is happily broadcasting a signal that says it is sailing in circles in the middle of the Mediterranean. It creates a perfect digital alibi. To the world's watchdogs, the ship is boring, compliant, and safe. In reality, it is loading millions of barrels of forbidden crude oil under the cover of darkness. This gap between the digital map and the physical reality is where the Dark Fleet lives. It is a technological lie that allows the gears of global conflict to keep turning. But why go to such lengths? Why build an entire shadow logistics network just to move oil? The answer, as it almost always is desperation. When Western nations slapped sanctions on Russia, on Iran, on Venezuela, the goal was simple: to starve them of cash, to make the cost of war or oppression too high to bear. They wanted to turn off the tap. But oil is not like other commodities. It is not a luxury item you can simply choose to stop buying. It is the blood of the modern world, and blood always finds a way to flow. These regimes needed a way to sell their oil without using Western insurance, Western banks, or Western ships. They needed a back door. And so the Dark Fleet was born. It is a state-sponsored smuggling ring on a scale the world has never seen. We are not talking about a few crates of contraband hidden in a banana boat. We are talking about billions of dollars flowing directly into the pockets of regimes that are supposed to be isolated. Every time one of these ghost ships successfully delivers a cargo, a war in Ukraine is funded for another week. A nuclear program in Iran buys another centrifuge. The sanctions that are supposed to be a cage have become a sieve, and the Dark Fleet is the leak that no one seems able to plug. However, to pull this off, you need ships. And you cannot just buy a shiny new supertanker from a South Korean shipyard without raising eyebrows. You need something else. You need the junk. In the normal world of shipping, a tanker has a lifespan. After about 15 or 20 years, the salt water has eaten away at the hull, the engines are tired, and the safety inspections become too expensive to pass. Usually, these old giants are sent to the beaches of Bangladesh or India to be broken down into scrap metal. They are razor blades in waiting. But in the last 3 years, something strange has been happening. The scrap yards are quiet. The old ships are not arriving. Instead, they are being bought by shell companies registered in places like the Marshall Islands or the Seychelles. Companies that didn't exist a week ago. Companies with no phone numbers, no employees, and no history. These are the vessels of the Dark Fleet. They are the rust buckets of the sea, decrepit, poorly maintained, and stripped of their names. They paint over the old letters on the hull and stencil on new ones. Names like Titan, Pablo, or Young Yong. These ships are ghosts in more ways than one. They are machines that should be dead, resurrected to carry the most dangerous cargo on Earth. They are crewed by sailors who are often desperate, paid in cash, and told not to ask questions. They sail without standard safety checks, without proper maintenance, and most terrifyingly, without standard insurance. If a normal tanker crashes, a massive global insurance conglomerate steps in to pay for the cleanup. It costs billions. But when a Dark Fleet ship crashes, there is no one to call. There is no office in London to sue. There is just a shell company that dissolves the moment the oil hits the water. And the risk of that happening is higher than you think because of how they move the oil. It is rarely a straight line from point A to point B. That would be too easy to track. Instead, they use a technique known as STS, ship-to-ship transfer. Imagine two massive steel leviathans, each weighing hundreds of thousands of tons, meeting in the middle of the open ocean. The waves are rolling, the wind is howling, and they have to pull up alongside each other, mere meters apart without crashing. They are often doing this with their transponders off in the dark to avoid detection. They throw hoses across the gap and pump millions of gallons of crude oil from the sanctioned ship to a clean ship. It is a laundering operation. Once the oil is on the clean ship, it has a new origin story. It is no longer Russian oil. It is Malaysian blend or unspecified crude. It flows into the legitimate market, into the refineries of India or China, and eventually, perhaps, into the gas tank of your car. You would never know. The molecule of oil does not carry a passport, but this dance in the dark is incredibly dangerous. A single mistake, a single rogue wave, a single mechanical failure on these rusting hulks, and you have an environmental catastrophe that rivals the Exxon Valdez. And we have already seen the warning shots. The Pablo, an aging tanker typical of this fleet, caught fire off the coast of Malaysia. It tore the deck apart. Miraculously, it was empty at the time, but next time, we might not be so lucky. The ocean is vast, but it is not infinite. And right now, it is playing host to a high-stakes game of Russian roulette. The existence of the Dark Fleet forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth about our global order. We like to believe that laws are like physics, that if you break them, there is a reaction, that if the world unites to say no to a dictator, the money stops. But the Dark Fleet proves that the global economy is far more fluid, far more amoral than we want to admit. As long as there is a demand for cheap energy, there will be someone willing to sail a rusting bomb across the Atlantic to supply it. So the next time you look at a map of global shipping, at those thousands of orderly dots moving in straight lines, remember the empty spaces. Remember the gaps between the dots, because that is where the real story is happening. In the silence, in the dark, where the ghost ships sail, carrying the fuel for tomorrow's wars, waiting for the inevitable moment when their luck finally runs out. The ocean has always been a place of mystery. Ancient mapmakers used to draw monsters in the corners of the known world, warning sailors of the dangers that lurked in the deep. They wrote, "Here be dragons." Today, we believe we have tamed those dragons. We have replaced the monsters with data, with satellite tracking, with international treaties signed in well-lit rooms in Geneva and New York. We tell ourselves that the world is ordered, that rules matter, and that there are consequences for breaking them. But the Dark Fleet is proof that this order is a fragile veneer. It is a reminder that the global economy is not a moral engine. It is a hungry animal, and a hungry animal does not care where its food comes from. As long as the world remains thirsty for oil, as long as we demand that the lights stay on and the prices stay low, these ghost ships will continue to sail. They are the shadow cast by our own consumption. We have built a system where we can technically follow the rules while physically breaking them. We have created a reality where a ship can be in two places at once, where a cargo can lose its history, and where accountability dissolves in the salt water. It turns out that sanctions are not iron bars. They are just lines drawn on a map. And on the open ocean, lines on a map mean nothing. So, the next time you stand on a beach and look out at the horizon, staring into that that endless, calming blue. Ask yourself, what is hiding just beyond the curve of the Earth? The ships are out there. They are running without lights, their transponders silent, their hulls rusting, carrying the fuel that powers a world that pretends they do not exist. We are all sailing alongside them, navigating by a map that we know is incomplete, hoping that the inevitable disaster doesn't happen on our watch. But hope, unfortunately, is not a strategy, and the ghosts are always watching.